Viewers, it was in March this year that Pakistan's Army Chief, General Asim Munir, strongly, emotionally, and stoutly defended the brain drain that is taking place in Pakistan for quite some time. Let's listen to him what he had said.
These emotions that you have for us, our sentiments and emotions for you, they're even stronger. You're not only the investors of Pakistan, you're of course the warriors, the soldiers of Pakistan. You are the light of Pakistan, which shines onto many countries of the globe. And the way that you are contributing for your country in the form of the remittances, investments through multiple channels, that show that how much of love that you have for your country. हमारे beloved जो overseas हैं, because आप एक different तहजीब में रहते हैं. Don't you ever forget that you belong to a superior ideology, a superior culture. जो इकबाल ने भी कहा था ना, अपनी मिल्लत पर कियास अक़वाम मगरिब से न कर, खास है तरकीब में कौम रसूल हाशमी. कहा जाता है कि जी, there's a brain drain which is taking place in Pakistan. Oh, come on, is it this the brain drain? Is it not the brain gain which has taken place? That we have sent such fantastic ambassadors abroad that you are representing our country in every nook and corner of the world. Is this the brain drain? And if this is the brain drain, then we would like to continue with this brain drain for an indefinite period of time.
Regardless of the merits of his argument, the army chief, in my view, did not fully explain the reason why he supports the brain drain. The question, therefore, is what he actually meant. Viewers, I'll try to answer this question in the later half of this video clip. But right now, we are going to listen to an interview of Sanjaya Baru, the author of Secession of the Successful, by Karan Thapar. And we'll show you some of the excerpts from the talk. Al-Ihtisabat Menul Kalam Baina Karan Thapar wa Sanjaya Baru.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Immigration out of India is by no means a new phenomenon. In fact, it's been happening for centuries. Traditionally, it comprises people migrating in search of economic prosperity or political sanctuary. But now something new has become apparent. The rich and influential have also started to migrate. A recently published book explains this new phenomenon. Here it is. It's called Secession of the Successful, The Flight Out of India. And its author is the former editor of the Business Standard and the Financial Express and former media advisor to former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, Sanjay Baru. Today, Sanjay Baru is my guest. Sanjay Baru, the title you've chosen for your book, Secession of the Successful, is tantalizing. It refers to the migration of a very specific and particular type of person. Can you start by explaining who are the successful you're referring to?
Well, I refer to two kinds of successful. One are India's talented, well-educated, what we call the brainy people, constitutes brain drain. And the second are India's wealthy, which is in fact a more recent phenomenon, what are called high net worth individuals, HNIs. 23,000 millionaires have left India in the last few years in order to escape tax or to live more comfortably in more developed countries. So I'm looking at both phenomenon, the immigration of talent, which is much longer, started in the 1970s and the 1980s, but the immigration of the wealthy, of the urban rich, which is a more recent phenomenon.
So we're talking not only about extremely rich businessmen, but I take it when you talk about the immigration of talent, you're actually referring to well off middle class Indians who, if they stayed in India, would have had good jobs and would lead comfortable, privileged lives, but have nonetheless chosen to go and live abroad. Is that what you mean by talent?
That's right. I mean, the talent is of professionals, doctors, engineers, scientists in a range of professions. This began in the 1970s. That people with higher education in India leaving India, almost 2/3 of IIT graduates have been leaving this country. There was a study done some time back looking at Madras IIT. Almost everybody was leaving, and the phenomenon that I now draw attention to in this book is that it's no longer simply chaps who come out of an IIT or an IIM or an Indian Institute of Science, but young people coming out of schools, very good schools in Delhi, in Bombay, across the country, which help those kids get what is called a IB certificate, International Baccalaureate, and they're all going for undergraduate education abroad. So there is, in fact, a class of Indians who could have contributed to India's development, who could have studied here, improved the quality of life in this country, who are leaving us.
Now, in your book, you've identified four principal reasons why the successful, both categories of successful, immigrate. Briefly, can you explain those four reasons one by one?
Well, I think, first of all, the migration of talent, what we call brain drain, began when the West became more open to Indian immigrants. The United States changed its immigration policy in the 1960s and started allowing a large number of Indian doctors and engineers to go there. That was the first trigger for brain drain. The second trigger was the Y2K problem when we moved from the 20th century to the 21st, and you needed fixing of the entire computer systems around the world. The United States discovered that India had the largest pool of talent, and so the whole H-1B visa export, the software engineer export, all of that was triggered by Y2K and boomed after that. And that led to the increasing number of Indian computer science professionals going out. As far as the drain of wealth or the flight of capital is concerned, I think that we have seen only in the last 10 years. And that's partly to do with the fact that more and more the upper class Indians are able to afford buying citizenship overseas. Lakhs of Indians are buying citizenship. In fact, I quote a figure in the book given by the Foreign Ministry in Parliament about the number of Indians who have given up citizenship in the last 10 years. It runs into hundreds of thousands, and that's because they're able to buy citizenship of a range of countries, from Dubai to Portugal to Greece to Cyprus. Now Trump has said you can buy American citizenship. And finally, I think there is a feeling that things are not going well for many of them in India, and things are better off in other parts of the world. So one can understand Indians going to USA or to UK or even to Australia or New Zealand, but when you start settling down in Dubai, you ask or other European countries, you ask the question, what is going wrong with our country, that more and more of these people are willing to leave.
But you're making an important point. They're both attracted by the better life abroad, as well as pushed, in a sense, by the difficulties that they're encountering doing their business or perhaps even leading normal, happy lives in India. Both factors are at play.
Yes, in fact, that's the interesting thing. I mean, what I do in this book is actually to begin with a little historical background. I go back to the large emigration of Indians in the mid 19th to the early 20th century, which is the export of indentured labor during the British period. And if you see, and those are what we call today persons of Indian origin. They live from Fiji and Mauritius to Suriname and to Trinidad and Tobago. If you see that class of Indians who constitute almost 40 to 50% of what are called overseas Indians, they were all pushed out. They were pushed out by their poverty. They were pushed out by the fact that opportunities here were not there. And then they were also attracted And that's the interesting thing which I record. They were attracted by the hope of better life. That is what took them. I mean, though they didn't get that better life, they were attracted by that hope. Which is not different from the export of labor to West Asia, which is the second wave I refer to. The large numbers of Indians who go to the Gulf region, who are again pushed out because of lack of opportunities at home, but also attracted by better income overseas. The third category, which is middle class professionals, are really, it's a pull effect. I mean, the push effect isn't that strong. After all, if you came out of an IIT in India in the 80s, there was a reasonably good chance of getting a good job. I don't think you would be unemployed, but you found that you got better jobs or better pay going off. So that was the pull effect was much more than the push effect. And finally, when we come to the most recent immigrants, the millionaires, I mean, the push effect for them can only be, they're feeling that there is tax terrorism in India, or Indian tax rates are too high, and they don't want to pay that tax, right? But beyond that, what is the push effect? The real thing is the pull effect of a better life, of living a first world life in the first world.
Let's for a moment focus on the wealthy, because that's the tantalizing part of what you call the secession of the successful. A moment ago, you said that Morgan Stanley had estimated that 23,000 Indian millionaires have left the country since 2014. Your book also says that Indians now account for close to 10% of all golden visa holders worldwide. To me, those are not insignificant numbers. They may not be huge in the sense of the labor that's been migrating in the 19th century or to West Asia, but nonetheless, they are sizable and significant.
Yes, indeed, they are sizable and significant, and I would not divert attention away from the quantitative aspect of this. The numbers are large, but I think we should also focus on the qualitative aspects of this, which is who is leaving, who are these millionaires, how many of them are leaving due to any form of distress, and how many of them are leaving willingly. So that is what I call the secession. I mean, you look at a big Indian businessman like Sunil Mittal. His sons live in the United Kingdom. Or Omkar Karanwar, his son lives in the United Kingdom. Or Lal, Aika, whose son Siddharth Lal lives in the United. More and more of Indian businessmen. It's not just the Malyas and the Lalit Modis, but really successful Indian businessmen are leaving India and living overseas and running their companies in India from overseas.
Now, as
And
you said, this secession of the wealthy began roughly 10 years ago. Two quick questions. In a sense, did it start with Modi coming to power? And is there a connection between his coming to power and this secession of the successful starting? And secondly, during the 10-year period, has it accelerated?
it has. Well, certainly it has accelerated. I think it starts really on account of the kind of high economic growth that we saw between 2003, 2004, and 2012. The golden years of India's economic growth, 8% per year during Dr. Manmohan Singh's first term, etc. So a lot of wealth was created in that period. And we have seen all the studies of people like Piketty, etc. The inequalities have increased. The top 1% in India has made more money than the bottom 90%, etc., etc. So the money was made in an earlier period, beginning from the early part of this century. But I think that money enabled them to buy this citizenship or buy property overseas. What has certainly also added to this process is the feeling that things are getting tough in India. More and more businessmen feel harassed. I mean, the pressure on them, whether it is through agencies like the Enforcement Directorate or the CBI or other forms of harassment, political harassment, or corporate rivalry, a very big company trying to buy up smaller companies using their kind of influence and power. All of this has created an environment of discomfort, which has certainly increased in the at least last 6 years after 2019, if not before.
Now, as a result, you write, and I'm quoting from your book, it's no longer uncommon for the chairman or some other senior management persons to be in London or New York or indeed in the south of France or the Cayman Islands and conduct or participate in board and other meetings of a company located in India. In other words, they end up getting the best of all worlds.
Yes, and this is really I discovered the product of the COVID. I mean, it was during COVID that government of India allowed online board meetings and online everything, the management of a company. So today you don't have to live in India to manage an Indian company. We talk about big business. I can't think of too many countries in the world where a big businessman is running his company living outside his country. I don't think any of the big companies in China are managed by a Chinese living outside, or any of the big companies in the United States, for that matter, or anywhere in Europe, are actually managed by people living outside. Today, more and more Indian companies are being managed by Indians living outside.
But this is very interesting. A change in law brought about by the Modi government during COVID. And for understandable reasons, because during COVID, face to face meetings were difficult, has continued and has facilitated the secession of the successful. They can now sit in London, New York, or Monte Carlo and perfectly easily preside over board meetings held in India.
Absolutely. And that's the phenomenon I draw attention to.
Now, let me ask, is this succession of the successful unique to India? Or maybe I should say unique to other countries like India? Or does the term also apply to Americans and Europeans who leave their own country to live in another?
Well, I mean, look, emigration is a worldwide phenomenon. Historically, it's a natural phenomenon. I've said all that in my book, that there's nothing unnatural about emigration, right? People have moved from one country to another for a long time. But this movement of people has been restricted, especially after the Second World War. And in the last several years, it's become increasingly difficult. So it's not that easy for people to just move around. And that is why you need either money or you need talent to be able to secure the visa you need to get out, right? Now, in the West, movement within the West is quite easy for people living in the West. If you're an American moving to Europe, or you're a European moving to America, it's not that difficult. But certainly from the third world, or from the developing world, a country like India going to the West is not that easy. So you need to have something to be able to buy that ticket and buy that visa. And I think that is where either it's your brain power, human capital, or financial capital. Now, you ask the question: are there any other countries? Actually, there are two countries where we have seen a fairly significant, flight of what you could call the elite, which are China and Russia. And the point I make is that both in China and Russia, you could say they are not democracies or they're autocratic societies. People are feeling uncomfortable. There's a movement of people because they feel that there are better opportunities. But come on, I mean, India is supposed to be a democracy, a free society, and if we don't want to be in the same bracket as Russia and China, right? And I think that's the real issue of, if you look at a country like India in the rest of the world, I mean, there would be from say, let's say Brazil or a South Africa. In South Africa, more whites than blacks emigrating. But at the end of the day, Karan, I mean, while I call it a global phenomenon, I think what we in India have to be concerned about is a problem that actually we were concerned about. And that's the point I make in the book, which in the 1970s, Jagdish Bhagwati, Dandekar, so many economists, distinguished economists, were worrying about this challenge. Today, nobody is.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Let's come at that point, because I think this is a very good moment to do it, to some of the moral issues the secession of the successful raises. You point out in your book that it's behind the protectionist walls of the Indian economy that the Indian corporate sector has become cash rich. This means, as you point out, it is these super profits extracted from domestic consumers that the wealthy transfer overseas seeking property and citizenship for themselves. Is there a moral or ethical issue here? They get rich at the cost of ordinary Indians and then transfer their money abroad to seek a better life for themselves.
Indeed, there is an ethical issue or a moral issue, but there's also a larger issue of economic policy. Our protectionism, our attempts to keep Indian business protected from international competition, has enabled them to enrich themselves. I mean, how many of India's big business are actually in globally competitive businesses? Most of them are in highly monopolistic markets. They extract monopoly rents, whether it's in infrastructure or oil and gas and port management, etc. Right, airport management. These are all highly monopolistic or oligopolistic markets, and you extract your profits in these markets. And with the profits that you've earned, you're buying citizenship overseas or relocating overseas. The Ambanis have moved their family office to Singapore. GM Rao has in Dubai. I mean, a lot of Indian businessmen have set up family offices overseas.
Tell me, is this morally or ethically wrong? Or if wrong is the wrong word, is it improper?
Well, I mean, it is of course improper and ethically wrong. But for me as an economist, the issue is one of is it economically justifiable, and what are the policies we need to pursue at home in order to discourage this, in order to prevent this, in order to retain that wealth within India. So it's for me more an economic policy issue than a morality issue.
In fact, you very clearly in your book lay some of the blame, if not a fairly substantial part of the blame, at the door of the government. You write that this trend has accelerated in the past decade is an indictment of the current political and policy leadership. And given that it began when Mr. Modi came to power and it's accelerated during the 11 years he's been in office, how much of the blame lies at Mr. Modi's doorstep?
Oh, substantial part of it, because the trend is accelerated. I mean, I wouldn't have written this book 10 years back, because the data that we have in this book, in terms of people giving up Indian citizenship, in terms of millionaires going overseas, in terms of companies operating from overseas, this data would not have been available 10 years back because it didn't exist. So, really, what we are looking at is the more recent trend. And that is what I've tried to capture in the book.
In other words, the economic policies that the Modi government is following and is enhancing is encouraging people to think and go abroad.
Yes, Karan, but I want to also emphasize the fact that there's been a failure on the part of economic thinkers, economic policymakers, economists, because in the 1970s, as I said earlier, we had very distinguished Indian economists worry about this. Several papers were written. There are editions of the Economic and Political Weekly devoted to this issue of brain drain. I mentioned Jagdish Bhagwati, V.M. Dandekar, highly distinguished economists of that period. And it was an issue that they were worried about. And you had all kinds of solutions. I mean, Bhagwati, who's free trade economist and not at all a statist economist, not a socialist economist, advocated a brain drain tax. Dandekar, who's
Divorce. Now I'll try to answer the question by stating that while addressing the overseas Pakistani convention, the Field Marshal and Army Chief Asim Munir was actually appreciating the role that they play through sending to the country remittances every month. And all of us know that remittances, the workers' remittances play a highly critical role in Pakistan's economy as they constitute 8% of the country's GDP. However, insofar as India is concerned, workers' remittances are far higher than Pakistan's, but they constitute less than 4% of India's GDP. The viewers, workers' remittances, or the money sent to Pakistan by the overseas Pakistanis, play a highly crucial role in the country's economy. Remittances by them help the country overcome or meets or successfully meet its external repayment obligations and the country's import bill. Many Azabul Sarfazamaz, Ya Rabu Gazeta, Karachi, Pakistan, Anna Sarfazamaz, Library, Treasury, Karachi, Pakistan.